That's awesome.
Thunder Mifflin, this is Pam.
Pam, it's Michael. Help me. I need help right now.
I enjoy having breakfast in bed. I like waking up to the smell of bacon. Sue me. And since I don't have a butler, I have to do it myself.
Hello. What is up, everybody? My name is the Austinator, and welcome back to the channel. And it is spooky month. Yes, it's the month of October. And what better way to celebrate spooky month with one of the spookiest shows of the year, Halloween Havoc 1995. But of course, I'm not alone. I'm here with my co-host, Shifty. What's up, Shifty?
Moo ha 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 ha. Spooky.
It's a very spooky time here in October. And of course, we're talking about the most horrifying event of all time, Halloween Havoc. Especially in WCW World, at least. It was like the spookiest show of the year.
Yes. Also, the debut and the only, well, one of two appearances of the most spookiest wrestler of all time, the Yeti.
Oh, yes. We're going to be talking a lot about WCW Halloween Havoc 1995. Yes. It is that one show where the Yeti shows up. Yeah, this show. I'm actually creating like banners and stuff for this, and man, oh man, this show was all over the place. We'll talk about it more once we get into the show. I know we were talking a little bit backstage. I agree the show isn't as bad as some people make it out to be, but there are just things to this show that just do not work and just flat out even like just bad. But I'll at least give it credit. At least it was somewhat entertaining, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, there was never a moment I was like, let's get on with it or anything. I think most of the issues were typical WCW booking, and maybe some of the matches were a little bit too short. But I don't know. I like most of the matches on here. I think that the real problem is the absurdity of what they ended the show with, and the Yeti. Once we talk about him, I've got a lot of stuff to say, but yeah, it ended very poorly. Just terrible.
We'll talk more about the main event once we get to it, because I do have an issue with the main event, and it's not necessarily the match itself, but the way they decided to end the show.
I get two MVPs of the pay-per-view though, and I'll let you in on that later on. But yeah, two guys really stood out, and they aren't wrestlers. Two guys really, you know, went above and beyond with their performances and their duties in the ring. And yeah, I don't think enough people mention these two people. You talk about the WCW, especially this pay-per-view. I haven't heard anybody mention a certain performance of one person, and we'll get to that.
Sounds different.
Yes, we will get into that, but first, before we do that, we got to talk about the show Halloween Havoc 1995. The show's it drew a 120,000 buy rate, pay-per-view buys, and it was in Detroit, Michigan. Your commentary team, of course, again, for this pay-per-view, Bobby Heenan and Tony Schiavone. So at least they established early on, like, okay, the Nitro announced team is Steve McMichael, Bobby Heenan, and Eric Bischoff. And your pay-per-view announced team is Tony Schiavone and Bobby Heenan. And I'm just going to say here, I felt the commentary was a bit lacking on the show, especially since all they do is just talk about the main event, which is the Monster Truck Sumo match, and they don't even really pay attention to the matches. And they even talk a lot during the course of the show about the tag match, which we'll get into. I want to get your opinions on this, Shifty. What do you think about the commentary here? And were there points where you just kind of roll your eyes and go, really?
I can understand them focusing on the main event because it's something special. It's something they've never done before with the monster trucks, and they probably wanted to get people to call their buddies and like, hey, you need to order this or you need to get in on this, and try to up the buy rates or during the course of the show. I don't know. I can understand why they did that and neglected to talk about the other matches as much as they should have. But this goes into what I was talking about before. What I was talking about before has something to do with the commentary team. And I got to say, I don't know if I'm a fan of Tony Schiavone at all. Well, not much because
Mario and
both this pay-per-view and going back and watching Nitro, I'm kind of leaning towards Eric Bischoff as being a better commentator.
I'm fucking
really.
Yeah, and this is something that I'm going to talk about later. But I don't think it just felt like Tony did not give a shit about certain things in the show, or doing his duty as a broadcaster in relation to working with Bobby Heenan. But that's all I'm going to say right now. I do not like some of the things he did on this show, and I think it was kind of disrespectful to Bobby Heenan. But like I said, we'll get into that later.
Yes, we will. Before the real show begins, I guess I could talk about the main event results. There were 4 matches on the main event show, aka it's like their pre-show type of show.
See, that always screws me out when you say that. Well, we can talk about the main event, and I'm like, oh wait, you're talking about the main event now? What? The main event is until the end of the show. No, the pre-show was called the main event, which doesn't make a lick of sense that they would call that the main event when it's the pre-show.
Yeah, it is very confusing. But there were 4 matches on. I'm going to call it. I'm just calling it the pre-show because main event is just way too confusing.
Yeah.
There were 4 matches. Eddie Guerrero defeated Disco Inferno in 3 minutes and 21 seconds.
Quick match.
We also had Mr. Wonderful.
Mr. Wonderful.
He defeated the Renegade in 1 minute and 22 seconds.
Damn.
Man, the Renegade's really going down the card here.
Yeah.
We have Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko defeating the Blue Bloods, Lord Steve Regal and Earl Robert Eaton at 8 minutes and 41 seconds.
That was probably a good match.
It probably was. Too bad it wasn't on the show.
Yeah.
And then we had, in the main event of the pre-show, we had Craig Pittman defeating BK Wall Street in 3 minutes and 37 seconds.
See, they forgot about the tag titles. You would think they would have the tag titles on the pay-per-view or on somewhere on the event.
No, it was not there, and also the U.S. champion was on the show, but he didn't have the belt with him. So
I hope between now and World War III that they get back into the title mix with the tag teams because it just feels like they just dropped that. I mean, they had a couple of appearances of Harlem Heat and stuff, but I mean, wait, who are the tag team champions right now? They lost them to.
So they dropped them to the American Male Shifty, if you remember, on the Nitro.
Yeah, and then they got him back.
Yeah, Harlem Heat won him back on Saturday night.
Okay.
So the title reign was kind of pointless for the American males, but good on them, I guess.
Okay. Hopefully they'll get back into that whole division within the coming weeks.
Yeah, they'll probably be back sooner rather than later. But speaking of titles, before we get into our first match, though, at the beginning of the show, they're covering like the entire event, like what's going to happen, and we see Hulk Hogan and the dry-plagued monster trucks, dude. So they're playing in the monster trucks, and they're like, later on tonight, we're going to be seeing Machine versus Machine, Hulk Hogan, the WCW World Champion, taking on the Giant in a monster truck sumo match. And let me just tell you, everybody, the commentary team's going to be saying that all night. So
Yeah.
Also, I want everybody to remember this. During like the opening of this broadcast, Flyin, Brian, and Arn Anderson attacked Ric Flair backstage, so they don't know if Ric Flair is going to be available for the tag match later on tonight with Sting, which we'll get to it when we get to it, because yeah, it's a clusterfuck, but we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it in a bit once we get to that match.
The whole storyline there is a clusterfuck.
Kind of like WCW was a clusterfuck, but
yeah,
more on that eventually. So after that, we get a brief recap of like about the first match. So in case if you guys haven't been watching these streams, Johnny B. Bad won a number one contenders match to face Sting on Saturday night when he beat Flyin' Brian at Fall Brawl, but he didn't make it to the show, and Sting ends up facing Flyin' Brian instead. And then I think it was like towards the end of around the end of the show, he ends up showing up late because his tire was slashed. And DDP comes in and he's taunting Johnny B. Bad, saying, me? That would have happened to me. I would have won the WCW US title. My tires wouldn't have been slashed. And then, and then I believe Max Russell brings up the 4 flat tires, and then Johnny B. Bad's like, wait a minute. Who said 4 flat tires? I always said 1 flat tire. And then sucker punch.
Yeah. Punches.
God.
That's great.
And then give a brief recap from the last stream we did. It was the previous Nitro. There was a WCW World TV title match between these two, which this match was already advertised for the show, but they end up putting the match on Nitro anyway. And DDP hits Johnny B. Bad in the back of the head with the TV title, and then he counts his own pin. He steals like the confetti gun. Just a lot of like
hijinks.
A lot of hijinks heading into the show, which is honestly one of the more shenanigans. Yeah, it was actually one of the better build-ups to the show. Even though we don't really see it on Nitro, we at least fully understand what the story is and why they're wrestling each other. So I'll at least give them props here. So we kick off the show with the TV title match with DDP defending against Johnny B. Bad. Basically going to break down this match and then we'll talk about it. Johnny B. Bad comes from behind and attacks Page with some strikes and a knee lift. Page ends up landing stomach first on the top turnbuckle. Johnny B. Bad then fights off both Max Muscle and DDP and gives them a meeting of the minds, like I like to call them. They fight outside the barricade, and Johnny B. Bad puts a bucket on Page's head and hits his head, and then hits his head on the ring post. Johnny B. Bad is working at Page's arm during the early going, which then Page keeps pulling the hair to take him down, but Bad keeps kicking up. Both men attempt leapfrogs, but then Johnny B. Bad does a hip toss with a smooth pin, which honestly I thought that looked really cool, the way he transitioned that hip toss into a pin. He does the drop kick, and Johnny B. Bad tries to do the 10 punches in the corner, but Page takes control by slamming Bad face first into the corner. DDP takes control with some strikes and a knee drop. DDP then Irish whips Bad sternum first before hitting a belly-to-back suplex. DDP ends up hitting a pancake for a 2. DDP, I think around that portion of the match, he gets cut above the eye, so he's kind of bleeding a little bit. DDP ends up putting in a headlock. Johnny B. Bad counters with a hip toss and then does a backslide, which then DDP hits a clothesline. Johnny B. Bad attempts the victory roll, but Page ends up punching him and gets cocky, so Bad ends up taking advantage and only gets the 2. Page then hits the power slam for a 2. Which then Page then starts choking Johnny B. Bad out with the wrist tape while Muscle is striking the ref, and Bad nearly passes out, and the referee does the lift the arm 3 times, and Bad gets his arm up before the 3. Johnny B. Bad ends up hitting a belly to back suplex, countering the headlock attempt. Johnny B. Bad sweeps Page's leg. DDP punches him, but then Bad hits him with 2 atomic drops. He then hits him with some strikes and a head scissors, leading to a double axe handle for the 2, which then throughout this whole run with DDP, he has the Diamond Doll, aka Kimberly, and throughout his run, he would have her hold up the 10. Well, on this one, she ends up pulling up the 10 for Johnny B. Bad, and everyone's like, "Oh my god!" And then you have Toy Schiavone, he gave her a 10, or she gave him a 10.
Yeah.
Johnny B. Bad hits a sit-out powerbomb for the 2. DP, I really like when he does this movie. He carries the hip toss with the DDT. I know they called it something, but I don't remember what it was. But this was a really nice counter. And, Johnny Bad holds on to the ropes to avoid the best move in the business, the diamond cutter. Johnny Bad attempts to go for the 10 in the corner again, but he ends up sending DDP out of the ring. Johnny Bad hits the Bad Day for the 2, which then, this is where the finish happens. Johnny Bad ends up sending Page into Max Muscle for the 2. Bad then sends Max Muscle into the post, and then Page then tries to hold Bad down for Muscle to hit him, but Muscle ends up hitting Page with a clothesline or like a strike, and Bad takes advantage for the 3, and now Johnny Bad is the new WCW World TV Champion.
And the ref saw it too.
Yeah, and he didn't disqualify him, but I guess maybe because it was not intentional, then I guess it doesn't count. I don't know. It's WCW rules for you. Other than that, I mean, the match was pretty good.
It was decent. I think there was a couple of rest holds there that maybe lasted just a little bit too long, but it was a good match. Going back, like I said, going back and watching these matches, it's a different style than it is today, and you don't realize how many rest holds and stuff they did back then. It's just different. It's I don't know. They've improved the game over the last several decades.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to let the rest holds take away from it because I do acknowledge that it was a different time, and the match was good. I would argue at points it was better than the Pillman match because I think my biggest complaint with the Pillman and Johnny Bad match was that you could argue it's a little too long.
Yeah, well, they had to stretch that out because they had to go to the time limit on that one.
Yeah.
So,
but I think the one thing I prefer from that match compared to this is I think the finish at Fall Brawl was better than this because it just felt kind of lame, kind of going from like it kind of goes to that third gear and then DDP just loses to a strike.
Mm-hmm.
So it was underwhelming in terms of a finish, but I do think these two had great chemistry, and it's definitely setting up a rematch later down the road, which I think they're doing the rematch of World War III, if I'm not mistaken.
Boy, between this match and the interview with Gene Okerlund after, they put Johnny B. Bad over, and he was over. I mean, the crowd loved him, and I think one of the problems is why he was so over in WCW and then kind of failed in WWF, not just because he had Sable over there taking spotlight away from him. He wasn't as vocal from what I remember as the Wild Man. When he was more of a mysterious character in WWF. That was totally different than Johnny B. Bad in WCW, where he's over the top and just vocal and interacting with the fans. And that's what got him over. And Vince just dropped the ball and realizing what made him popular in WCW.
Yeah, and it's a damn shame too, because Mark Marrow, Johnny B. Bad, was really good. He was a great wrestler. I mean, I think what made Mark Marrow work in WCW, and maybe this is just me, but he never really had the chance to be like a main event guy. Like he was primarily the opening act where he'd get the crowd hot, be like, and everybody, yeah, Johnny B. Bad, because he also had the theme, and he was very exciting to watch.
It would have been so weird if he had stayed in WCW because, I don't know exactly if they would even gave him a shot then when everybody came in with the NWO and stuff, where he would be, because you had the Luchadors taking up most of the undercard, and then you got the NWO stuff taking up the main event stuff, and he would be stuck in the middle. And I don't know. I think his only course was to go to WWF, but they didn't know how to use him. So, I think he got screwed every which way on that one.
Yeah, and I also agree with you on that because, like we've mentioned, Johnny B. Bad ends up leaving for the WWF in around 96 early on. So he's not going to be WCW for much longer after this. But it would be really weird because I do agree with you, Shifty. I don't know what they could have done with him once the NWO came in. And that was kind of the case with a lot of guys because once the NWO came in, I just don't think Johnny B. Bad would have fit in that era of WCW where it was just bloated.
Not unless they had him like kind of transition into like a DDP like people's champ character where maybe he would have like teamed up with DDP or something. That's the only position I see him being in that landscape.
That was crazy.
It might have worked, but yeah, honestly, I think he would have. I think around that time he definitely fit better in the WWF, but they just didn't understand what made Johnny B. Bad work because they took away his music. And granted, yes, it introduces Sable, but it's like even then, like they didn't know what to do with them because they never gave him a chance to be a main event guy. Like, it was almost like it almost feels like he was always slated to just be like a lower mid card opening act guy that might win a mid card belt somewhere down the road, but they just never knew what to do with them, which is a shame.
Yeah. Oh, something I want to bring up in the before the match started, they had a recap of what all went on Saturday night when Johnny B. Bad didn't show up and Sting faced Brian Pillman. I noticed supposedly that was a one episode, but Sting had two completely different outfits. So I kept on wondering, did they tape that two different times? Did Sting go backstage and like, I can't go out there in the same outfit. I got to put on a whole new face paint and everything. So it was weird seeing him in two different outfits on the same show. It was supposed to be taped, and it was supposed to be in quote unquote live, but it wasn't live. It was taped. It was supposed to be in one show there, but I think they probably taped it two different times. So
yeah, that is very weird. I did not notice that.
Purple and green.
Maybe it was just one of those like things where I just didn't notice because I'm like doing other stuff in the background. So
I just don't think he was like the Macho Man, where Macho Man, like at WrestleMania 4, he came out in a different outfit every time he wrestled. I don't think he would go to that much effort and putting new face paint on and all that.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. But speaking of matches and speaking of clusterfucks, speaking of Macho Man, actually, our second match is a match to determine if Randy Savage will end up advancing later on in the show to face Lex Luger. It's Randy Savage versus the Zodiac.
Did you notice the theme music for the Zodiac?
Yeah, this was the first thing I noticed, and this is the first piece of notes because I barely have notes for this, but I put down Zodiac comes out to Rey Mysterio Jr.'s theme.
Yeah. I was like, whoa! I said that they repurposed that. What?
Like, I didn't know that. I don't know if that was maybe like a redub or if he actually came out with that, but that's really strange. There's
a long history of wrestlers using other wrestlers' music. I mean, like Real American, Mike Rotunda and Barry Windham, they had Real American before Hulk Hogan. So, they pass the music off to other people when it's, if they have to. Dean Malenko's WWE theme, it was reworked for Cesaro at one point. So, they recycle stuff over the years.
I never knew about that. That's actually really interesting.
Yep.
And then I also put down on my notes, Randy Savage is flirting with the woman during his entrance. Sounds about right.
Okay.
After that,
what woman was it? It wasn't woman, was it? There was just a woman. It wasn't the woman.
A woman, yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't the woman, unfortunately.
What is it? A woman with a cane.
Oh my God! It's a woman with the cane. So I really don't have any real notes for this because this match was a clusterfuck.
Yeah, but something happened during the middle of it.
I think I might get to that.
You better.
So Savage is attacking Zodiac before the bell. A fan enters the ring, and the ref's trying to get him out. And while this is going on, both guys are fighting on the floor while the ref's taking care of this fan. so they're fighting on the floor. They get back in the ring. Zodiac hits a body slam and misses a splash, which then Savage hits the elbow drop for the 3. It was a quick match that was a clusterfuck, and maybe it wasn't their fault. I will say I'm not going to completely blame them. I don't know if that was how long the match was supposed to go, or if that was how the match was supposed to be, but like you can tell the fan really affected this match.
But this is the big, well, one of my big reveals of MVPs, and this guy, this isn't his first reason I am inducting him as MVP tonight. I'll mention him later, but referee Randy Anderson tackled that fan immediately when he got in the ring, and he held him down. I think he even threw a couple punches on him. He held that dude down until security got in the ring, and he did a great job of controlling the situation. And then Heenan, when they were on the outside of the ring, they took the match to the outside of the ring so they could get the camera off the fan and what was going on. He said the ovation that was, everybody was getting excited because the fan had jumped in the ring. He said, the ovation for Macho Man Savage is off the charts, and he covered for it nicely. Both of them did a great job there.
Yeah, he definitely did. And man, like it's a shame because like I'm not saying that this match would have been great, but honestly, you kind of feel bad for them because like you can tell like they were kind of being forced to improvise on the spot, and it just wasn't great. And it definitely makes like the Luger match feel even much more weird because like Savage is more fresh going into the match with Luger, but Luger's coming out like he's like, we'll talk about it more when we get to Luger Savage, which, spoiler alert, Luger wins his next match.
And this, because the fan got in the ring, sometime down the line, it's within the next year or two, it's going to be another fan that gets in the ring during the NWO segment with Hogan and Savage, and Savage goes off on the fan, and I mean he goes off on him, and I'm wondering if it's because of this match and how it ruined the segment. Because I mean, wait till we get to that point on Nitro. He gets lit up. He's like, I ain't taking none of this shit. I'm going to chase him out of here. But people do this from time to time, and sometimes it can be amusing, but nobody should do this. That nobody should jump the barrier. Now they like I remember in WWF there was a match. I think it was RVD versus Eddie Guerrero, and I think it might have been a ladder match or something. And I think Eddie was on like a ladder, and the guy came in and was trying to knock it down or something. People are dumb. People are dumb, and thank God for the security that they have at these shows, because it's no telling what could happen. And there's probably a lot of cases of fans trying to get into these matches that we don't even know about that could have done some real damage. And hats off to the security teams of all these shows that's been going on.
Hey, Deshaun, good to see you. Yeah, fans are just stupid in general. Like, I'm not trying to act like a heel here. I just think like wrestling fans sometimes just takes this shit way too seriously.
It's a show. It's a show, and you don't need to be a part of it.
Right? Yeah. It's just common sense.
Yeah.
Which sometimes they miss. So after this, we get like a backstage thing with Mean Gene. He's plugging the hotline with, I'm Mean Gene, and I'm plugging the hotline where Mark Mann and Mike Tenay are talking with Jimmy Hart.
It says, please do not call. This phone number is no longer active.
This number is no longer active. Please do not call the hotline. So it's talking about how Jimmy Hart's has been in contact with someone from the WWF. And then he's like, stay with me now as a new world television champion, Johnny B. Bad. And, Johnny B. Bad gives this inspirational promo about how, I've always wanted, to be the world television champion. I won this for everybody, and, I'm going to make everyone proud, and then Mean Gene is like, so we're going to celebrate later. And, they're like, talk about how they're going to celebrate with some Greek food, and they're going to go to karaoke, and Mean Gene's going to sing. I mean,
yeah, I didn't even know that he was Greek, so that was a nice little tidbit he threw out there.
So I'm guessing that Mean Gene's going to have Greek food after the show.
Yeah.
So, hey, good for Mean Gene and Johnny B. Bad. They're going to go do karaoke and eat Greek food.
Yeah. Sounds fun.
Sounds very fun. But you know what? You know what else was not fun? The next match. No, I'm just kidding. It was all right. Road Warrior Hawk and Kurosawa.
Yep. It was great. It was short. It was hard hitting, and Hawk really should have had a solid singles push at some point.
Yeah.
Dude was awesome, but you know it is what it is. I thought it was a good match. But you know it's not top of the card, but you know solid.
It is solid, and I think I gave this like it was a solid grade because when you really look at it, these guys did not have a lot of time to work with.
No.
Like again, I don't know if this was the intention or if this was just like, hey, we need to kind of have a match to stall for time here, so here you go. This felt like it was just padding the card here.
Yeah.
The basic premise of this match is, you know, Hawk got his arm hurt by Kurosawa, so now Hawk came back. He's looking for revenge. The basic breakdown of this match is you get an aggressive start from Hawk with some strikes in the shoulder block. Hawk ends up hitting the sit-down neck breaker and a fish drop for a 2. Hawk went for attack on the corner but misses, and Sawa tries the arm bar, but Hawk counters. Hawk then hits the gut wrench slam, and he ends up hitting a power bomb. Colonel Parker, who's, you know, managing Kurosawa, holds Hawk's leg and gets slammed, but Sawa misses an elbow drop. Then Hawk clotheslines Sawa out of the ring and dives on Robert Parker, which then Sawa then throw him into the ring post. Sawa ends up hitting his backdrop driver and a Samoan drop before using the ropes to get the 3. Yep. I mean, it was hard hitting. It was quick. I mean, there's nothing to really complain about here because you can tell they were trying to make it work with no time that they had.
Yeah.
And,
I liked it. It was all right.
For what it was fine. It didn't hurt anything. It didn't like make me go, "Oh my god, this is the greatest match ever." It was just a fun match.
Yeah.
Which is all you
fun
need.
match.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Actually, I got.
So then after this, we get another Mean Gene interview with Randy Savage backstage, and then Randy Savage's like, "Ooh yeah, I'm a wild man at Hulk Hogan. I saw your promo on Nitro, and let me say, I'll beat you up, Hogan." And then like for some odd reason, Randy Savage is like, "Mean Gene, your mustache is sideways."
It was pretty crooked.
It was very crooked, and then like Mean Gene is like arguing with him. He's like, you know, Randy Savage, your beard is crooked. And you know, and this leads to an argument, and then basically the premise of at the end of this promo is that after they make up and kiss, you know, they're like, he's like, "I'm gonna help Luger beat Meng," and then he doesn't come out to help Meng, and his curiosity is being killed by the monster truck match. Ooh yeah, that was basically the Randy Savage promo. I do not transcribe these promos because they're like really quick. I just get like the basic premise. But it doesn't do the promo justice, to be honest, because it was a Randy Savage promo, but and it's entertaining. It got me hyped up.
Yeah, you don't have access to enough cocaine to properly do a Macho Man impression, but
no, I do not. I just don't have that macho madness. Ooh yeah. I haven't stepped into a Slim Jim.
Yeah, get you a couple of those. You'll be good to go.
I was watching a compilation of those like Slim Jim commercials, entertaining as hell.
Oh yeah, and they actually put him back on the advertising. If you ever go to Walmart, you can look on the boxes they have in the checkout aisle. They have Macho Man on the side
they
of the box.
do.
Yeah, I actually took an empty box one time. She's like,
really old.
"What are you going to do with that?" And I said, "I'm going to take it. I mean, y'all ain't just going to throw it away." I said, "I'm going to take it and I'm going to put it on my wall."
It is a really cool package, I'll be honest.
It is. It is pretty cool.
So after this, we get another match here. Sabu taking on Mr. JL. If you guys haven't seen the previous reviews, Sabu took on Mr. JL on Nitro. I believe Sabu won that match, so I guess it's a return match because Mr. JL got beat up, so he wants revenge. And Sabu is actually coming out with the original Sheik here, which again, very, very interesting here.
And the Sheik gets knocked down before he even gets to the ring.
Oh, yeah. This match was, I will say, just like the Hawk match, this one was very fun. It was fast-paced. It's, again,
But
it's
there
what
was
you expect. Yeah.
a lot of high spots and a lot of crash and burn moments where people like miss their spots, or the other guy gets out of the way and then they hit the railing and stuff. It was madness. It was macho madness. It was crazy.
It can't be as crazy as the Macho Madness.
It was pretty fun though.
It was fun, and that's what I'll give these two matches: the Hawk match and the Sabu matches. They're both fun. They're not anything to like crazy, but they're enough to at least get this show going here. So to break down this matchup again, JL hits the enziguri, but Sabu ends up throwing him to the barricade. Sabu does a second rope moonsault on both JL and the original Sheik, the guy that walked him out to ringside. I don't know. That's pretty crazy. I mean, Sabu is crazy, so why not? JL then throws Sabu into the barricade, which then Sabu misses a splash. JL does a dive off the top rope, which then he throws Sabu onto the top rope, and Sabu ends up missing a standing moonsault, but JL ends up doing his own standing moonsault and then hits the sit-out powerbomb for the 2. JL misses a corner knee, and Sabu hits the leg drop for a 2. JL does the middle rope German suplex, which looked really nice for a 2. Yep. Sabu does an avalanche victory roll for a 2, which then JL does a triangle drop kick to Sabu to send him to the floor. Sabu ends up hitting JL, sending JL throat first into the rope, and then does the rope-assisted moonsault for the 3. I also had to rewind a little bit because, at the end they're like, oh, the original Sheik hit Mr. JL. I'm like, wait a minute. No, he didn't. And I had to rewind a bit because I'm like, no, this isn't, no. And I rewinded, and then I'm like, no, they didn't hit him. I guess he hit him after the match.
I can't remember. It was a week ago.
Yeah, but other than that, though, I thought the match was fun. I do agree it's a bit messy at times, but with the match that fast pace, with like only I think I'm like looking at the match here. It was only like 3 minutes, so it's like.
Yeah, but it was man. They covered a lot of ground in that 3 minutes.
Yeah, they did, and I props to both of them though for doing that, because you could tell they were there to prove something. And again, not the best match on the show, but for what it was good.
Yep.
Moving right along here, I feel like I am kind of rushing along a little bit, but that's also because I have something. After the stream, I have something else I gotta get done. So,
okay,
like,
that's fine.
I'm not trying to like be fast, but I'm trying to at least move things along here, because keep in mind we also have a lot of other matches that we got to talk about. So some of these I'm just kind of like.
It's just a good thing. It's just a good thing we're not covering 3 nitros tonight. So.
Yeah. Which we'll talk about after this. So after the match, the Dungeon of Doom, they're cutting up. It's Taskmaster and the Master. They're cutting a Sullivan, the stars in Milky Way are ready for you, my son. And Tokyo, Japan, and there's going to be an eclipse of the sun. At Taskmaster, you're going to walk along the galaxies and will destroy Hulkamania. And then
because you are the ultimate warrior.
You're the ultimate challenge. And then Kevin Sullivan's talking about how the giant is going to lead us to the new next era. And Randy Savage, Lex Luger, and Sting are all vultures. And the monster truck is more powerful than Hulk Hogan's. That's basically the entire promo. So, I guess we got to eat away some time. So just go out there and say something. Speaking of other segments, remember that Harley Davidson winner from the first Nitro?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, he's here now to collect his Harley Davidson. And, it's Mean Gene, Mike Hill, somebody else. We got Tony Collini, and then we have Of course, our Harley Davidson, aficionados, Jimmy Hart and WCW World Heavyweight Champion Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan's still doing that dark side
This is
thing.
not a democracy.
And
What do you think this
they're
is?
standing there. They're like, "Hey, Mike, congratulations! You won this bike, and now you're gonna hear some stuff." And then, of course, they give the mic to Hulk Hogan, which, oh my God, this man, Dark Side Hogan is crazy.
Yeah.
So first he's like, Mike, this is Maniac Mike, dude. He's a Hulkamaniac brother. And then he calls Tony Collini, I swear to God, my friend, Tony Collini, he's Cadillac Jack, brother. I'm like, what the fuck? Huh? Where did you get Cadillac Jack from?
Well, he might work on Cadillacs also, besides motorcycles.
His name's, he works at Cadillac's brother, Jack. That's what I like to say, brother, dude, Jack. He's Jack now, dude. Brother might get some sweatshirts and hats, and now Mean Gene wants an exhaust pipe.
Right, I'm making an executive.
Which then Hulk Hogan starts grieving about, his Harley Davidson. My Harley Davidson, dude. The Hulkamaniacs gave it to me, brother. The Giant ran over it, dude. And then I don't even know, he calls the other woman the high woman, dude. And then I'm gonna bury you, Giant, next to Andre, brother. I'm gonna make sure you fall off that rooftop, dude. Jack.
Did they ever establish how the Hulkamaniacs gave him the bike? Did they start a GoFundMe fund or something to build him a bike, or what? Who gave him the bike? Which Hulkamaniacs?
That's a great question. We'll never know.
Because it was just a bunch of kids. It was just a bunch of kids out there.
You know what? At this point, I just don't disbelieve anything that ever happens in WCW.
They all pulled their allowance together and bought him a Harley.
Yeah, pretty much. That's at least what I would like to think. But other than that, the Mike Hill thing is very weird because why would you bring this back up now? You really couldn't have done it during Fall Brawl. I don't know if that was just maybe a scheduling issue or if maybe they were just trying to find something for him to win. I don't know. But it was very strange.
Maybe part of the prize was a trip to the next pay-per-view. I don't know.
Maybe. That could be. But I still think that's a little weird to wait this long to do it, though.
Yeah.
Speaking of pay-per-views, this is where we begin the WCW World War III build in terms of the actual advertising, where it's 60 men, 3 rings, 1 winner, WCW World War III 1995.
And because that pay-per-view is coming up, there's going to be hijinks to where the world title is going to be held up or something to where they put in the match, because there's no use in doing a 60-man battle royal unless they have a world title up for grabs.
Yeah. And I know they bring up that whoever wins gets a shot at the world title, but I'm like...
I think red versus blue.
Honestly, we'll talk about that when we get to World War III, because we have to get through Halloween Havoc first before we really get into it.
Well, hopefully World War III doesn't happen before we get to World War III.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
So next up was a match that I was very interested in. It was a rematch from Nitro. Lex Luger taking on Meng.
Did you see the name on the gravestone when Meng came out?
Yeah, it was Crockett, right?
Yep, Crockett.
I
didn't know he had died.
I didn't know either at that time.
No, I don't think he was dead, but yeah.
28 minutes before the strike.
I really wonder whose idea it was for the Crockett gravestone to be there.
Maybe Dusty or somebody. Probably.
Maybe somebody who hates fucking Crockett or something. They're like, yeah, fuck that. This guy sucks.
Well, I don't think they hated Crockett. Crockett was well liked. It was Jim Herd that they didn't like, that took it on after in the early days of the Turner acquisition. That's the guy that they didn't like.
Yeah,
but
because I've seen lots of podcasts like the Cornette podcast where he literally buries the shit out of Jim Herd because even I've seen some of what Jim Herd did with WCW and it's just absolutely hard to watch.
He was like a manager of like a pizza chain or something.
Yeah,
and he had no understanding of the wrestling business.
They tried to make Ric Flair Spartacus. Again, I don't know why.
Flaricus. Ricicus. Flaricus.
Like, God, like, that's just so stupid.
Uh-huh.
But also something to point out here, you'll see throughout the show that a fan has a poster, Lex Luger fan has a poster, and it's pictures from his WWF run. Yeah, well, sorry to that kid for.
Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to find back issues of wrestling magazines where she could go back and you could go back and find his early WCW stuff. So she was working with what she had.
Yeah, that's fair. So this match with Luger and Meng, we'll talk about once I break down this match because I have some thoughts. Luger, he has an aggressive start with some strikes. Luger, stops like a move and stops him in the mid, stomps Meg in the midsection. He does a slingshot into the top turnbuckle, which then Meng's face gets grinded to the rope, but Meng ends up taking advantage with a kick to the gut. And I will reiterate, this is a very strike-heavy match.
Yeah. Oh, two. I mean, it has to be because Meng's like the toughest dude on the planet.
Yeah. No, it is, and it's a very strike-heavy match. Luger boots Meng, and he clotheslines Meng to the outside. Luger throws Meng arm first into the ring post, starts working on Meng's arm. Luger then misses a move in the corner, and Meng counters a belly-to-back suplex for a 2. Meng hits Luger with the shoulder breaker, which looked really nice. Meng works on Luger's arm, which then he ends up hitting a pile driver on Luger for a 2.
Sorry, I'm not.
Meng locks in a chin lock, which then Luger hits a crossbody for a 2. Meng hits a belly-to-back suplex for a 2, which then Meng sends Luger to the outside and keeps kicking him to keep him outside. Meng ends up missing a drop kick, which then Luger tosses Meng to the apron and suplexes Meng back into the ring, which then Meng basically no-sells. Luger takes Meng down with 3 clotheslines and a back body drop and 2 more clotheslines.
Oh my God.
Luger hits Meng with a power slam, which then Meng hits Luger with the golden spike again. And before Meng could get the 3, Taskmaster hits Luger to give Luger the DQ win.
Yeah.
Which kind of furthers the issues of, like, is Luger with the Dungeon of Doom or is he not? Spoiler alert, he is. It was... I want to hear your thoughts, Shifty, about this.
I thought it was a good match besides the DQ storyline finish. I understand why they had to go that way to further, the ongoing story with Luger and the Dungeon of Doom. But it was a good match. I mean, I don't think Meng has ever had a really bad match, and he actually, I mean, they made him look strong while keeping Luger look at somewhat, strong during the match. I personally, and this is I don't want to sound too. I'm marking out for Luger or nothing here, but dude looks awesome, man. I think he was a better than he was as a narcissist. Dude was cut. His shoulders were freaking huge, man. He had to been juicing or something, but he had such an awesome look at that point that it's really weird that Hollywood didn't come calling for him. Now, I know that they didn't have superhero movies back then outside like Batman and stuff, but they should have done something with him in Hollywood. I know he appeared on Superboy in the late '80s, and he actually wore a Superman suit. But that's the only time I can remember him doing anything in Hollywood. But the dude had an awesome look. And, but like I said, he had to been juicing just a little bit because them shoulders were freaking large. I mean, but them two guys just tough match, tough hitting, hard hitting match there. And Meng's always quality. So, I liked it. I liked the match.
I thought it was a solid match. I think my thing was it was very, like, the strike heaviness part wasn't the bad thing. I thought the match at points dragged on a little bit too long, especially like if you're gonna do the match with Savage like later on, you would think that the match would be like not quick, but like at least decently timed. But it kind of feels unrealistic for Luger to magically be okay after having a 13-minute match and then like getting hit with the golden spike. I just think.
Oh my.
Yeah. But like we said before, we don't know how long the Savage Zodiac match was going to last, and it's just one of those things where they probably didn't have a lot of people booking the show, and whatever the booking was, it was probably ad-libbed a lot because WCW always felt like it was just like on the spot booking. Like I don't think they really had a lot of stuff planned out besides the finish, so. They were probably just going by the seat of their pants out there.
Yeah, it definitely felt like they had to cut some time here, so they probably gave them some more time. But did it necessarily need it? Maybe
probably
not.
But they're two such magnetic guys, larger than life guys that I think that made up for it a bit. Because you're like, oh, Luger, man, those tough guys, and it's just I didn't notice it too much, but
I didn't think it was a bad match. I just honestly wish maybe you could have cut it down a little bit more.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Other than that, it wasn't bad. It was solid. So then after this, Mean Gene, we get another backstage interview with Mean Gene. Mean Gene's all over the place tonight. He cuts a backstage interview with the Giant, and the Giant's like, the 100 diameter isn't big enough, and I'm going to push Hulk Hogan off the roof. And then if he's still breathing and he's still alive, I'm going to drag Hulk Hogan back to the ring and chokeslam him through the floor, and I will be made the WCW World Heavyweight Champion.
He about rips off Mean Gene's hand holding the mic there.
He does. And then Mean Gene's like, ah! And then next time he's like, oh, your hands are freaking big. You next time I am going to hold I'm going to hold the microphone, or you're going to hold the microphone. It's like, God damn it. So, again, the promo was done for the most part to just set up the match with Hogan, and which is fine, right? Like, yeah, the promo was fine. You could he's Paul White, the Giant's still green here in terms of his promo work, but
wait, he was a green Giant.
He's the Jolly Green Giant. I can't believe they never really done anything with that. I'm very product placement right there. What's up, Dandelion? Good to see you.
Hey, Dandy.
So, okay, now it's time to kind of stop the fun train for a little bit because we have to talk about this next match. It is a tag team match, or could be a handicap match because Ric Flair is not there. It's Ric Flair and Sting taking on Arn Anderson and Flyin Brian. To get the basic premise, and this is why the finish makes no sense. Like, you can argue it's a very overly complicated story, but it's it was just too complicated for its own good. The basic storyline of why this match is happening is, Flair came back after he quote-unquote retired after he faced Hulk Hogan. Flair comes back. Arn Anderson thinks Ric's getting way too obsessed and is going crazy over Hulk Hogan. So now they're feuding. They had a match at Fall Brawl. Flyin Brian helps Arn win, which then leads to Ric having a couple more matches with Arn where Ric beats him by DQ, and then Arn wins in the cage match. Then Ric wants a handicap match and wants Sting to be his partner. Sting doesn't want to help him, but he kind of has to. He's like, all right, Ric, if you help, I'll help you, but if you turn on me, I'm going to kill you. And so they have a tag match on Nitro. Sting comes out late. So then now Ric Flair and Sting are best friends leading into this matchup. And that's how we're here. And now Ric Flair is supposedly injured. And that's the basic premise and backstory. And now,
which doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. If the whole thing originated with Ric Flair being obsessed with Hogan, why wasn't the turn on Hogan? It would have been a much better storyline than the Dungeon of Doom if all this had led to Ric and Hogan teaming up, and then him turning on Hogan, because that's what originated it. It started off, and the whole storyline is bad.
Like, okay, if you want to reunite the Horsemen, okay, but you have to do it in a way that makes sense. Like, what does Sting have to do with anything? Like, other than the fact that Sting is teamed up with Hogan, what does Flair have? Why would Flair want to single out Sting out of everybody? That's the part that doesn't make sense.
I don't know.
But
I don't.
Let's break down this match real quick before we even talk a little bit more about this, because there's a lot here. You get some great technical wrestling from Sting and Arn in the early going. Sting kicks Bryan off the apron and like he puts Arn in like a full Nelson. He puts Arn on the top rope and just drops him on his back, which looked really cool. Arn keeps pulling Sting's hair and Sting's like kipping up. Arn hits a shoulder block, which then Sting hits a bulldog and fights off both Bryan and Arn. Bryan ends up slapping Sting, and then they go to the outside. They attempt like a cheap move where like Arn's gonna attack Sting while he doesn't know Arn's there. He misses, and like Sting ends up hitting clotheslines at both of them. Bryan gets back into the ring, but then he ends up getting press. He attempts a handshake with Sting, but gets press slammed. Sting slingshots Arn into Flyin Bryan and launches Bryan into the barricade. Arn does a meeting of the minds with Sting and Bryan. Which then Flair finally appears. You know, he's in street clothes. He's going crazy. He's got the bandage on his head. You know, he's flipping out. You know, Flyin Bryan attacks Sting on the outside while the ref is distracted. Sting no-sells Bryan's chops, which then Bryan gets into the corner, tags in Sting to hit a pair of knee drops. Or no, he tags in Arn, so then he could hit Sting with a pair of knee drops. Arn blocks in a chin lock, but Rick comes in, takes off. He ends up taking off one shoe, which then Arn, ends up breaking up. Arn hits a body slam on Sting. Arn tries to throw Bryan into Sting, but then Sting gets his knees up, which then Arn hits Sting with a belly-to-back suplex. Arn tries to do the hand, like he tries to do like the like almost like a leapfrog type of pin where like, you know, they're like to test a strength pin, but then when he tries to jump, Sting gets his knees up. He goes for the tag, but again is stopped. Arn puts Sting in the abdominal stretch, which, you know, he and Bryan are cheating, and you know, he tags in Bryan, he grinds Sting's face in the canvas, he does some strikes and some bites. He locks him in a single leg Boston Crab, which then Arn and Bryan attempt to double team Sting again, but Flair stops it. Sting tries to fight back during this, gets hit with the best spine buster in the biz, the AA spine buster. Bryan and Arn then work on Sting's leg. Arn locks in the bear hug, and Sting gets his arm up at the 2. He boxes Arn's ears. Sting fights off the double team again and does meeting of the minds to Arn and Bryan. And then this is the finish. Sting gets the tag. Rick, comes in, huge pop. Rick comes in, he does the strut. He bounced off the rope and just sucker punches Sting and immediately turns on Sting. And then Arn Anderson, Sting, and Ric Flair triple team Sting. They're beating him up, and this basically reunites the 4 horsemen. The 4th guy we don't know yet. It's just 3 right now. Here's the problem with the match. This is a match that went way too long. It dragged on. Like, if the point was for Ric Flair to turn on Sting, this match should not have been as long as it was.
No.
It was, I think if I'm looking at the time here, it was like 17 minutes. It felt longer than 17 minutes. And I like all 4 guys involved, but the problem is the finish makes no sense in the context of everything. Like, I understand this was just all a ploy to reunite the 4 horsemen, but the execution just does not make sense. Like, why Sting?
I don't know. But going back to my MVP, Randy Anderson, he also got involved. I think it's been a week. I think he got kicked in the head by Ric Flair when he was trying to protect Sting.
Yes.
So this is twice he's mixed it up on his pay-per-view so far. Definite MVP performance by referee Randy Anderson. And Heenan sold the turn, even though it was a dumb storyline and a terrible storyline. But he sold that turn beautifully on commentary. Beautifully.
He did. And honestly, Bobby Heenan really made the turn at least sort of feel like, oh my God, this is a big deal type of thing.
Yep.
But even then, it was predictable in a way because you're like, well, it doesn't make sense for Ric Flair to immediately just be like, oh, Sting's my friend now, Arn Anderson. We've been together for so long, and I'm the dirtiest player in the game. Like, I get that Ric Flair was inevitably gonna, ultimately reveal like, nope, Hulk Hogan, I'm Hulk Hogan, I'm the bad guy. And then Rick, it just doesn't work. It feels like the idea is there. Like if this whole thing, and like you said, if it was building up to where Hogan was going to team up with Flair and like Rick turns on Hogan, that would have made more sense.
I think if it was in an era where cell phones had existed and you could work like a backstage segment or something where Arn or Rick or Arn are getting mysterious phone calls and they're talking to somebody, and maybe something's going on behind the scenes we don't know. That would be a great way to set it up and make it feel like there's more sense put into it. But the way it did, the way they pulled it off, it was bad.
It was really bad. And then we get a promo after this where Mean Gene's plugging the hotline again, and he's like, Ric Flair, what I just saw in that ring was the most disgusting thing he's ever seen. And then Ric Flair's, you know what? We're going to school. And he's like, you don't mess with the enforcer, you don't mess with Flyin' Brian, and you don't mess with me. And then the fourth guy, we don't know.
That's the most disgusting thing he's ever seen. Okay, he saw Randy Savage get attacked by a cobra. He saw Earthquake smush a python in the middle of the ring. He saw a lot of crazy stuff in WWF, and that's the worst thing he's ever seen in his wrestling career. What?
Yeah, it's really weird here. Like, I get that they're trying to oversell this, but it's like at points it just makes you roll your eyes and go, yeah, okay. And so, Arn ends up, chiming in. He's like, you all wanted this, but be careful what you wish for. Then Ric Flair goes, the Horsemen are reunited, and it feels so good. Woo! That's basically the promo. It's brief, but it gives you like the Horsemen's, back, even though it makes no sense, but sure, whatever. Which also, speaking of something really interesting here, we get our first appearance of Mike Tenay here, where he does a backstage interview with Lex Luger. I mean, I know we've seen him briefly, during the hotline stuff, but this is the first time we really get to see him actually contribute like something, like in terms of like interviews and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So Mike Tenay is like interviewing Lex Luger. Luger's saying that there are outside forces, and Sting wanted the match between Luger and Savage because Sting had the book that week. So he's like, I'm going to be all over Savage, and I may not be 100%, but I'm going to beat Savage, and I'm going to prove that I'm the greatest. I'll be the greatest WCW wrestler ever, and I want the world title. And it's not going to be a bigger match than Luger and Randy Savage, and the total package gets what he wants. And then after this, we cut away to kind of a recap of like Hulk Hogan and the Giant and why this match is happening. I'm gonna give basically the shorter version of this because I'm just to save for time here. Basically the whole thing is like Giant has been with the Dungeon of Doom because he's Andre's son and he wants revenge on Hogan. So over the last couple of months, like he's attacking Hogan. So Hogan's like, we're going to war, brother. And then like, that's why the War Games match happens. And the Giant destroys the Harley Davidson, breaks Hulk Hogan's neck twice. And then we, of course, get the Grace Call recap one more time. We get the, what is this? It's a woman with a cane. And then you get the mustache shaving, and then Hogan's turn to the dark side, dude. He's gonna build a monster truck, brother. And like they're just recapping the whole like Hogan and Giant thing. Again, we're gonna see this match twice, so So that was basically the whole thing leading up to this. Then we get Bob Chandler and Eric Bischoff. They end up joining the commentary booth with Bobby Heenan for the monster truck match. Like they're talking about like. Well, Bobby Heenan's talking with Bob Chandler about the monster truck. He's like, oh, how big is this monster truck? And, Bob Chandler's giving him, like, the statistics. And Bobby Heenan basically says on commentary that he just wants Hulk Hogan to die. Like, it really just goes to show how great this kayfabe feud is. Because, like, Bobby Heenan's just to the point where he's like, yo, fuck Hogan. He sucks. I hope he dies.
Yeah. Heenan knocked it out of the park. I mean, before and especially after the match.
He definitely does.
Yeah, we'll get that in a second.
So, speaking of said monster truck match, the match they've been building up all night, the monster truck sumo match with Hulk Hogan and the Giant. Before the match, I basically put like a couple of notes here. Well, really, one note is just the entirety of the match, and then the second note's literally like the aftermath. So before the match, they're trash talking each other. They get the rules and they go into the monster trucks. This entire match is literally what it sounds like. It's just monster trucks pushing each other, and then there's like hidden charges all throughout. They hit a charge. The Giant nearly wins at a couple points where he pushes Hogan. He's almost got him out of the circle. Hogan ends up pushing Giant at the end. So then Giant and Hogan kind of have a little scuffle on the rooftop, which then Giant puts Hogan in a chokehold. Giant's on the ledge, and then Hogan accidentally pushes Giant off when he tries to get out of the chokehold. He pushes Giant off the ledge, to his death, and then Hogan's like, he tries to go for it, but he's like, oh no, help! Someone help, brother! Dude, I'm being torn apart, brother! No, dude, Jack, no! And then at the end, like, you had to have this awkward commentary where everyone's just like, what do we do here? Like, but it's kind of realistic in a way, because if you're put in that situation, you don't know how do you respond to that? Like,
yeah, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I'm at a loss for words over what happened, but I mean, the monster truck match, I thought it was fine. I thought it was cool. I mean, I'm into that sort of thing, so I mean, I didn't have a problem with that. What happened afterwards? Like, I never actually saw that. I heard about it over the years, and I heard how bad it was supposed to be, and how it was one of the worst moments of all time. In my mind, because I didn't actually see it, I thought when they said Hogan pushed, the Giant off the ledge of the rooftop, I thought he pushed the whole truck over. It was during the actual truck match. That's what I thought. I didn't know that they got out the truck and they had a schmoz, and then he accidentally pushed him, by hand over. So because he didn't push the whole truck over. It wasn't as bad as I had thought or I was expecting, but that finish was I don't know. And then he comes back here in a little bit. That's the point where it becomes ridiculous. But I mean, is it any more ridiculous than some of the stuff that they had with the Undertaker? Really? I mean, because Undertaker got put in a casket and then he rose above the arena, his spirit out of the video screen. So I mean, it wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen in wrestling, but it was pretty bad. But in a couple of minutes, we'll talk about how it did lead to a great segment with Bobby Heenan.
Yes. But my 2 cents on the monster truck match, I mean, I'll give WCW this, and I'll even give them points where, like, at least they did try to be different, and I'll give them points for that. That being said, the monster truck sumo match was just bleh. Like, again, I get what they were trying to do.
If you weren't into that sort of thing, but I grew up on like Discovery monster truck motorcycle type shows, so
sure.
I was like, hey, that's pretty neat. I mean, and I think they do some later on with Medusa and a monster truck on Nitro at some point. I don't know, because she ends up driving for monster trucks. I don't know if that was after her wrestling career or during it, but yeah, the wrestling and monster trucks has kind of went hand in hand a couple occasions.
Yeah, it was fine, honestly. I think for what it was fine, but it just didn't really do much for me.
And you got to wonder. You got to wonder if Hogan pushing the Giant off the top of there, if that kind of led to the Rock Steve Austin bridge situation where he pushed Austin off the bridge, because we didn't know what happened to Austin after that until like the next week. I don't think. So that might have inspired that segment. So WWE was like, hey, we can do that better. And they did.
Yeah, but at least that was explained better. Whereas here, it's just, the Giant fell. We don't know what happened to him.
Yeah.
So after this, they're like, all right, fuck it. Let's just get on with the next match. We'll figure out what's going on. And the entirety of this next match is literally just the commentary team going, so what happened to the Giant? Do we know? Do we not know? Which
Heenan's freaking out, though. Heenan is freaking out. He's selling it like $1 million.
So, yeah, and this leads into our next match, which is the co-main event, Macho Man Randy Savage, Lex Luger. Again, for time's sake, I'm just going to give you the brief recap. Basically, ever since Luger came in, Savage does not trust Luger. Luger's like, I want to be world champion. And, Savage is like, that ain't work for me, brother. And, they were in the same team in War Games. Savage thinks Luger attacked him on purpose. They had a match. The Dungeon of Doom, or the Giant came in, chokeslammed Savage to give Luger the win. So now Savage really doesn't trust Luger. Luger's like, I'm not in collusion, guys. And so Sting, the power of booking, decided, okay, we're going to have you two are going to have 2 matches. If you guys win your matches, then you'll face each other. And then they're just like, all right, we'll do that. And again, this match just feels like this was, all right. So to break this down, Lex wants a handshake. Savage attacks Luger instead. Luger responds with a clothesline, so they're brawling. Jimmy Hart comes out randomly. It's a very strike-heavy match. Luger's choking Savage out with the rope. Luger throws Savage out of the ring. Luger does an accidental off the apron to Savage's back. To then Savage that slams Luger's head into the barricade and steps. Savage with a clothesline to the back, but Luger counters an accidental off the top rope with a punch to the gut. Then Luger tries, a pin with the rope assist, but Jimmy Hart's talking to the ref. We don't know what he's talking to him about, possibly about the Giant being killed. And so Savage Irish whips Luger into Jimmy Hart, which then Luger gets hit with a top rope elbow drop for the 3. This was fucking pointless.
Yeah.
I don't understand what the purpose of this match was other than to maybe keep the feud going. But I just don't see, this match only went for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
There was no real clean finish here. And I wasn't expecting there to be, but I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, okay, you can't, other than to drag on this feud, I don't understand, it's just one of those weird things. Why did you need these two to wrestle a match before this just to have a 5-minute match that basically goes nowhere?
I don't know. Between this and what happens in a little while, it's I don't know. It's like booking on the fly. It feels like. I mean, even though they were building this up, it just either they were that dumb to have this planned out, or they just came up with it on a spot. I can't tell.
We'll never know, honestly. But before we get into the main event, I do want to bring up that Tony Schiavone, the Bobby Heenan segment towards the end. Basically, Bobby Heenan and Tony Schiavone, they're arguing about the main event. They're talking about Bobby Heenan just wants to know information, and Tony Schiavone's like, I don't know. And so
this segment is probably the best segment, my favorite segment of the whole show.
Yeah.
And I'll let you go on with it. I'll go ahead.
Because throughout all this, Bobby Heenan's like, look, I just want to know information. I don't care how much, I don't care how we get it. I just want to know. Schiavone's like, I don't know because, they're not telling us anything. And then Bobby Heenan walks off enraged, and he's like, all right, I'm going to find out myself. And then Tony Schiavone's like, fine. And then he's trying to talk about what's going on. Bobby Heenan, he comes back. He's like, look, and I really like this. And I like this little line thrown in by Bobby Heenan where he's like, look, I've known his father, and Andre the Giant. So he's kind of doing the whole canon thing where he's like, hey, I've managed his father, so that this is personal for me. And he's like, fuck Hulk Hogan, he sucks.
He got on his knees asking for information.
Yeah. He's like, look, we're in 1995. We have telephones, we have, walkie-talkies, do we just not have but we can't get any information? And they have a recap of earlier on where Giant gets thrown off the roof. He gets on his knees. He's like, he wants information. Well, Tony Schiavone is like puzzled, like he's kind of shaking his head in like almost like disbelief. And then Bobby Heenan's like, look, I just want a walkie-talkie. Give me anything. I just need to know what's going on. So
I don't know if it was disbelief. I love the segment. Most of it. I think Heenan killed it. I think Heenan showed what an MVP was and how he was underused there, and probably even underused in WWF at times, because he absolutely nailed it for the situation and storyline. Even though how outrageously stupid it was, he absolutely killed it.
I deserve that.
But Schiavone kind of was a prick. I don't take it as a look of disbelief. I take it as he did not give a shit, or he was above doing a storyline that WWF style to the point he didn't really. He just no-selled it. He just sat there, and it was absolutely infuriating seeing him just sit there like a knot on log when Heenan's given one of the best performances of his career, and he's like, he doesn't give a shit. That combined with the earlier segment the two had in the show where Heenan couldn't pull a word that he I'm having a hard time pulling the word right now, but he couldn't get the word that he was trying to say, right? And he was trying to describe a kiddie pool, and he was doing the hand motion to describe a kiddie pool. And at the end of the segment, Schiavone mocked him. He openly mocked him on the air, and he said, "I could kill you right now." And I believe that was total work. Not a work. I'm telling you, that was legit. All right, him and Schiavone, they didn't like each other, and he had every right not to like him, because Schiavone, he was a prick. He was a prick during two of these segments. And
yeah, he was.
And this is weird for me, because I never, when I grew up, I never caught on to this. But after, hearing interviews and stuff and going back and seeing clips, I'm actually flip-flopping to where I like Eric Bischoff more than Tony Schiavone as an announcer, and being, somebody that actually sells the shows and stuff, and it actually takes part in the storylines and doesn't no-sell the stuff. Which is crazy, because I couldn't stand Eric Bischoff back in the day, but now going back and watching him here, man, it's eye-opening. I just don't see how you could sit there and act like that when Heenan's on his fucking knees selling this shit, and it's crazy. It's infuriating as a wrestling fan.
No, I get that. I mean, I definitely do agree with you on that. I think Schiavone could have sold it more, and and I will say this too,
it was a stupid storyline. It was incredibly stupid moment for the Giant to fall off the top. I get that. But it's your job. Sell the shit. Even if it's incredibly dumb. Even if it's Triple H screwing a corpse in a casket. Sell it. It's your job.
Say what you will about Eric Bischoff, but at least when he was on commentary and he saw that happen, he was almost stuttering,
Yeah. Well, Bischoff was the McMahon in that whole scenario. So, I mean, kind of, because, he had to, and he knew he had to do that. But, man, and it's even more infuriating because Schiavone went crawling back to WCW just a few years before because he was in WWF and it didn't work out up there. And he asked Eric if he could get his job back, and they let him come back. And then he does that. That's just pitiful.
Yeah, I understand that. Speaking of something that may be less pitiful, or maybe is pitiful depending on who you are, we get the main event, and oh god, let's talk about this. All right, so the WCW World Heavyweight Championship match, Hulk Hogan with Jimmy Hart defends the title against supposedly the Giant, but he's dead. And I knew shit was fucked right from the beginning when Michael Buffer is he's like, ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event. And he's introducing the challenger. Everyone's like, Michael, did you not realize that the Giant just fucking died on TV? Did he just show up 5 minutes before and just didn't know? I knew this was going to be a screwed up main event as soon as that started. But let me tell you, Well, let me tell you, it gets crazier from here because Hogan comes out. They're like, "Oh, Hogan's not ready, prepared to wrestle here," and like Hogan's cutting a promo. He's like, "Look, dude, brother, I didn't know what was gonna happen, brother. I didn't really want him to die, man. I'm so sorry to you guys." And he's like, after what happened to the Giant, and then the Giant's theme, the Dungeon of Doom theme hits, and of course, here comes the Giant, who's magically alive.
Yeah.
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 As soon as this happened, I went, yep, something really, really bad's going to happen here. And, of course, it gets even more crazy, and Darkside Hulk Hogan has Taskmaster paint on his head. All right, this is not going well. And we're not even in the match yet. And,
it's ring psychology. Okay?
Oh, it's ring psychology.
That's why he had the face paint on.
So, okay. So, Hogan, you would think that Darkside Hulk Hogan would, wrestle, a different style than Hulk Hogan. Well, spoiler alert, he's just regular Hulk Hogan.
But he's wearing black, man.
He's wearing black, dude. I'm wearing black, brother. I'm Darkside Hogan, dude. I'm going to keep the black after this, brother, and I'm going to be bad guy. Meanwhile, he's wrestling like Hulk Hogan. I'm like, oh, God, okay. So, now I'm, like, losing more and more faith in this as this is going on. But the one thing I will say before we really start breaking this down, and once we get to that clusterfuck of a main event, I will give the Giant this. First match, it wasn't bad. He definitely had a pretty good performance here. I don't know if that was just because, he was working with Hogan, who was a notoriously safe worker, or what. But he did really well for his first match there. So I give him props for. Was it like a Kurt Angle type of thing? No.
But it wasn't a regular wrestling match, though.
No, it wasn't. But even then, I still give him props for at least kind of working here. And so, okay, to break down this match, and I'm going to try and break down this match as quick as possible so we can get to this the ending of this shit. So, Giant's no-selling Hogan's punches at the start. Hogan attempting to body slam him. Giant's just striking Hogan in the back several times. He's elbowing him, in the back. Giant kicks Hogan in the midsection. He's striking him a lot. Giant chokes out Hogan, a few times. They end up doing a test of strength in the middle of the match, which then Hogan powers out of it. Giant ends up doing a back elbow and a body slam to Hulk Hogan. Hogan's doing that back spot, dude. So Giant misses a leg drop, which then Hogan's he's already hulking up here. Hogan punches Giant and drives him headfirst into the turnbuckle and does the 10 punches in the corner. He bites him. He backbreaks Giant and he clotheslines Giant, in the corner. Giant eats 3 more clotheslines, which sends him over the top rope. Taskmaster and Giant try to leave, but then Hogan is meeting of the minds with them. He finger pokes the Giant. Giant eats 3 shoulder blocks. Giant gets him in the chokehold, but Hogan rakes the eyes. Then Giant ends up breaking Hogan's eyes, and he hits a backbreaker for a 1 count. Giant locks Hogan in a bear hug, but Hogan gets out. Giant body slams Hogan again. He locks back in the bear hug, and then, they're doing the whole spot where is Hogan going to get his arm up before the 3. He gets his arm up at 2, and then, he punches the Giant to get out of it, which then Hogan catches him in the chokehold, hits him with the choke slam, aka the showstopper. Hogan kicks out, and this is where the finish starts. Okay. So it's typical Hogan BS. Hogan kicks out of the finish. Hogan's hulking up, Giant striking him. And Bobby's like, I give up. He gives up on commentary. He's like, fuck it, I'm done. This sucks. Of course, Hogan's going to win. So Hogan's hulking up, Giant striking him. Hogan does the you. And he does the 3 punches. He hits the big boot. And then Tony Schiavone's like, and the big boot. He's freaking out with his big boot. I'm like, okay. So he rakes Giant's eyes. He does I'm going to slam him, brother. He slams the Giant. Hogan hits the leg drop, and before he can get the 3, Jimmy Hart hits the referee. And everyone's like, who hit the referee? Because the camera wasn't on Jimmy Hart. I'm like, okay. So everyone's confused, and then finally they're like, oh my God, did Jimmy Hart do this? And then so, Jimmy Hart's fading, he's telling Hogan, oh, let's get him back up. And then he ends up hitting Hogan with the belt, which then the Giant locks him the bear hug again. Savage and Luger come out. So then they're coming out, and then once they could get in the ring, that's when the camera pans to the Yeti. We see the Yeti come out.
Okay.
Which then, of course, the camera turns to the ring where Luger is just stomping out Randy Savage because, of course, the camera wasn't on Luger or Savage during that time because, of course, not. So the Yeti and the Giant are humping Hogan while Hogan's in a bear hug.
Yeah. I can't get that image out my head.
And then after this, Luger puts Hogan in the torture rack, which then Giant and Yeti hump Savage, which then Luger puts Savage in the torture rack. So everyone's dead in the ring. The referee holds up the Giant's hand. He gives him the belt while the announcer specifically saying, the Giant's disqualified, but Hogan's still the champ. And then, the Giants, and I will say this image was really cool, seeing the Giant put his boot on Hogan's chest and doing the Hogan ear taunt. And he's got the belt on his arm and he leaves with the belt. So everyone's confused because everyone's like, well, wait, he's not the champion. He's stealing the belt. So of course, are they going to lead to, did they steal the belt type of moment? No, that's not what they build to. I'm going to give a spoiler alert here for WCW World War III. The belt's vacated because, Jimmy Hart puts in a clause in the contract where if Hogan got disqualified, he drops the belt. So technically the Giant is the champion. But then they're like, nah, that's not going to work because you were in Hogan's corner. So technically the belt's now held up and we're going to have the belt be on the line in World War III, dude. This was just a clusterfuck of a finish.
Yeah, I didn't even remember that Lex Luger was with Jimmy Hart. So that was a memory refresher there. I didn't even remember that.
Here's the problem with this. If the main goal here is to keep the feud with Hogan and the Giant going while also trying to make both look good, I understand you want the belt vacated, but wouldn't it have made more sense is if you do the interference, Hogan loses the belt. He doesn't have to lose clean, but you could have had him drop the belt to the Giant and he pinned Hogan. So Hogan at least has a reason now to go after the Giant.
Just do the Undertaker Hulk Hogan scenario from 1991, where he lost the belt and it has to be put up in the Royal Rumble. A couple months later, they could have just done that.
But the problem is here, nobody looks good here. Everybody looks fucking stupid.
Yeah, and the person that looks the stupidest is the Yeti. Going back last week when I was complaining about the costume department or their lack of in WCW, I don't understand why the Yeti looks like a mummy. I mean, what did were they like? Okay, we need a big gorilla suit. We may need to spray paint it white because they're Yetis. They live in the snow. So you think you could get us one? No, we don't have nothing like that, but we do have some mummy costumes. Okay, yeah, that'll work. That's fine. Yeah, go ahead. We'll just encase him in ice, and then he'll break out, and we can just, mummy Yeti. What's the difference?
And the even worse part about this is they don't even use him after this. I think he appears one or two more times, and then I think they try to repackage him as something else, and then they're like,
who was that? Do we know? Was it Kurgan?
I can look that up for you. Because the Yeti was Ron Reese.
Reese. No, he was part of Raven's flock.
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Yeah.
Apparently, after this, he gets repackaged to the Super Giant Ninja.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, it's
the Super Giant Ninja.
Oh, let's see here. Oh, no. Apparently, he makes only 3 more appearances after this. He appears in the World War III match. He appears on WCW Prime. I didn't even know they did that. And then he lost a U.S. title match against One Man Gang on WCW Saturday Night. That was basically it.
Okay. Oh, going back to Randy Anderson, my co-MVP of the show. Not only did he take out that fan, not only did he get kicked in the head by Ric Flair during the Sting match, but he got taken out with a chair shot by Jimmy Hart in the main event. So
that's true. Randy Anderson was taking those bumps. So
yes, a good job on him. Good job on him. Him and Bobby Heenan stole the show.
I mean, I think Randy Anderson was the NWO referee, right?
No, that was Nick Patrick.
No, okay, that was Nick Patrick. Okay, but Randy Anderson's one of those refs you don't really hear, like, he's not as appreciated as he should be. I feel like he deserves a lot more credit for like the stuff he's done.
Oh yeah, he was really good. Like the only WCW referee that really stood the test of time because he ended up in WWE is Charles Robinson. I didn't know he was still working because I don't watch WWE as regularly. I just watch pay-per-views. And the other night I was watching like SmackDown or something. And I saw him in the ring. I was, hey, Little Nate is still reffing, huh? I did not know that.
It's really interesting that guys like that still are reffing to this day.
Yep. Like 30 years.
But getting back to this main event, though, and I know we're going an hour and a half here, but I'm just trying to figure out, like, okay, I understand you're trying to get the belt off of Hogan. I know that they're trying to do something big for World War III, but there's got to be a better way to do it here. Like, I'm not saying it has, like, Hogan needs to go over clean, or like Giant goes over clean, or Hogan goes over clean, but they could have done a better finish that made somewhat sense. Like, because Jimmy Hart, like, just turning on Hulk Hogan out of the blue, like, again, I know with, like, the promos over the course of the weeks where you have, like, Hogan, like, talking down to Jimmy Hart, like, I get that they're kind of building up to that, but there was, like, no real reasoning behind it other than, like, oh, he just turned on Hogan. So I'm like, okay, that's dumb. Like,
not even a hint. Not even a hint. And you had so many weeks. You had 6 weeks to build something up like that, and not even a hint.
Like, and like I said before, nobody looks good here. Like, the Giant does not convincingly beat Hogan, so he doesn't look good. Luger just looks, I don't even know if Luger even looks good here. He looks kind of like, I wouldn't say a hypocrite, but he just comes off as like someone who, like, again, I get his purpose and he wants to be world champion, but I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't make any sense because you just gave the Giant the belt, so you made it harder on yourself. You're associating yourself with the world champion again. Savage just doesn't look good because he gets beat up pretty easily. The Yeti just looks fucking stupid. No offense to the Yeti. And Hogan looks like a complete, utter idiot because, he trusted Jimmy Hart and Lex Luger. So it's like, it's a clusterfuck.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. It's just all over the place, and I'm just confused about the whole Luger aspect of it.
Because what does Luger gain from this?
Nothing at all. Like, he's now, I don't, like you said, he just gave the world title to the Giant, and maybe he thinks, I don't know. I don't even remember him being Jimmy Hart, and that's the thing. I just don't understand why he would even need Jimmy Hart. He doesn't need him.
No, he doesn't. And the really screwed up thing here is, like, I think we're like, what? Like, we've already seen 8 weeks of Nitro, I think, and we're 2 pay-per-views in. They really do not have a direction for Lex Luger. No. At least at this point in time. You can tell they're trying to figure out what to do with him and what will stick.
Well, it is understandable because he came over just in a flash. So, I guess they had some stuff planned and then they just tried to cram him in. But wow. Wow.
I understand you maybe want to bring some more legitimacy to the Dungeon of Doom because let's be honest, they're just a jobber group. Like, they are. Yeah. And so I get you want to put a big name like Luger in there to, maybe make the group look like a threat. But even then, like, it's so out of place.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because you have all, like, these outrageous gimmicks like the Shark, the Zodiac, the Taskmaster, the Yeti, and even the Giant. But, like, Luger is more of a straight-up wrestler. So what exactly does he contribute here to this group?
It doesn't make sense. I mean, they should have put him with Colonel Robert Parker or somebody. I mean, or even Sherry. It just doesn't make sense that they would stick him in like the Dungeon of Doom fold.
It just didn't make any sense. And honestly, this pay-per-view was just all over the place. Like,
I don't know. I thought it was okay until the end. The Giant going off the top of the roof, that wasn't great, but it led to a great thing with Heenan. And then the main event was terrible. But I think a lot of the matches, even though some of them were too short and some of them were too long, I enjoyed the pay-per-view. I liked it a lot better than the last one.
I will say it's more entertaining. And I will agree with you. Like, I understand why people don't like the show.
Yeah.
I get it. Like, it's compared to a lot of pay-per-views. And again, maybe it's just because it's, 2023 and we know the power of hindsight. Is it the worst pay-per-view of all time? No.
And especially people watching now that didn't watch back then, they did. I can understand why they wouldn't like it, because they didn't grow up with the hijinks and the craziness of the golden era and the new generation. And wrestling was a lot different back then, and it was a lot more hijinks and shenanigans going on. And I can understand why people that didn't watch it back then wouldn't like it if they're going back and checking it out.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, if the main event's bad, like, I can understand, like, because I know I hear people say, like, well, even if like this, and this were good, if your show's main event is bad, it just stinks up the joint. And I'm like, they're right and they're wrong. I feel like if the entirety of your show is good, more people are going to talk about the good stuff. But I kind of also understand, like, look, if you're building up your entire show over this one thing, and you get this.
Yeah, well, that's not always the case, because you had the Halloween Havoc where the Ultimate Warrior and Hogan wrestled, and then the pay-per-view cut off. So that's all anybody remembers, mostly.
Yeah, but it just, again, the main event was just, it's entertaining. It's entertainingly bad. Like, I can watch it and just be like, I'm at least reacting to it. Like, I'm like, oh, well, that's stupid. Why would you do that?
The double standing hump thrust bear hug between the Yeti and the Giant, oh God.
Now, I'm going to be upfront. Is this something that I would personally pay for in terms of a pay-per-view? No. I
would be angry if I paid for that and that was the finish.
Yeah, if I paid that kind of money at that time and I got that, I don't know if I would have been angry or surprised or both.
I never ordered a WCW pay-per-view. I ordered WWF pay-per-views mostly from 92 up until 96, and they were $29 to $35. And that was multiple weeks allowance, and I got allowance every 2 weeks. So that was 6 weeks allowance I'd spend on a pay-per-view, because my dad, it wasn't just going to order one for me. I had to pay for it. So if I had a crazy ass finish like that, I would be super bummed. And I was super bummed about WrestleMania 9, so that had a bad finish. But if I was a WCW fan and I got finishes like that and I had to pay for it with my allowance money that I saved up for months, man, I wouldn't be a WCW fan for very long.
No, and especially around this time with WCW, I know people when the NWO came in, it got better. I'm like, maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I've never seen most of the 96 shows, so I can't really comment on that. The only thing I will say is that, in 95, and when we say that wrestling was in a bad spot, it was in a horrible spot. If you look at the ratings from the past Nitros where we cover them, they're not doing really well in ratings. At most they're doing a 2.1. Yeah.
But they're an upstart though. I mean, kind of in the time period they are. So, and plus they're going up against Monday Night Football, and they just needed to find a footing and figure out how to get the show up to the level at least of WWF, and really find out how to take it to them. And within the next year they will.
They will indeed. And with that being said, though, guys, because it is a little bit late, we are going to wrap things up here. Before we do that, I do want to cover how we're going to do the next couple streams here leading into our next pay-per-view, World War III.
Yes.
I'm thinking because I think there's only like 4 shows until the pay-per-view. I think we might divvy it up like 2 and 2.
All right, that's good.
Because it'll at least be easier than doing the 3 shows.
Yeah. It's going to get really rough though once we start doing 3-hour nitros and 2-hour thunders in one show.
Yeah, I mean, I'll figure out how I'm going to do that because I don't necessarily want to do like a really long stream.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll divvy it up, maybe not.
But of course, they had a lot of advertising back then, so it may not be as long as we think it is in retrospect.
Yeah. Maybe not, but we'll figure it out as time goes on. I want to thank Deshaun, Jeremy, Dandelion. I appreciate you guys coming in. I'm going to go around. Well, Shifty, tell them where they can find you at.
You can find me on Twitter. That's Shiftygism at Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. That's Shifty GISM at Twitter, and I just talk about like geeky stuff and maybe I talk about geeky stuff too much on there. I don't know, but yeah, just check me out over there, and you can find me on the chat usually Wednesday nights over on Guy Scar's channel for the Hangout. The Basco scenario, Austinator here. He's usually on the show, and it's a cool show where they talk about everything in nerd pop culture and all that stuff. And eventually, whenever Chris gets his PC fixed, we'll be having Name That Tune and weekly wrap up and all that good stuff over on his channel and Hanstar's channel. And that's about it.
Awesome. And you can find me here. I just do various stuff, mostly these WCW reviews. We'll be back next week, probably talking the next 2 episodes of Nitro. And I might do some various other things throughout. And you can just find me at Wednesday nights for the Hangout. With that being said, though, guys, this is the Austinator and Shifty signing out.
Later.
Peace.